Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Kupferberg Holocaust Center. I work with Marissa. You all know Marissa. I work with her. I'm Dr. Flug, and we're really delighted to have you here. I always have to tell the interns that I don't work with something at the beginning of each of these program presentations, and that is that we have to confess something to you. We haven't been really honest with you. Now, don't get worried. You all came aboard as interns and you studied about the Holocaust. You've met your survivor and you're here today to talk about the survivor. But the one thing I have to tell you that I don't think anyone has told you yet is that you're really not an intern. You're an insurance policy. And let me tell you what I mean. Every time any one of our interns meets a survivor, knowing what they do about the Holocaust, what you've learned from Marissa, what you've learned on your own, you develop an understanding of that. And once you develop that understanding and you meet a Holocaust survivor, you are meeting someone extremely unique, extremely important, who have amazing stories to tell. Once you hear their stories, and this has happened to everyone, and you'll see what happens when you get up here to do your presentations, every one of you takes on an obligation. And that obligation is, now that you know that survivor story, you are going to tell that survivor story. You are going to think about it, and you have really entered into a contract with the survivor. You haven't signed a paper, and you haven't shaken hands, but you've entered into a contract, a verbal contract that says, I will not forget you. I will see that your story is told to other people, to my friends, to my family, to other people I come in contact with, but you will not be forgotten. And the whole reason we take you into this internship is so you will understand what happened to these men and women who were your age or even younger during World War II, the trials they went through, the suffering that they went through. But you are going to understand that. Now that you understand that and you've met these people, you become spokespersons for these people. Having said that, let me go to Marissa.
Well, welcome everyone. So again, my name is Marissa Berman. I'm the assistant director here at the center. And this is the second semester that I got to lead the Holocaust Internship program, which is a fantastic program that really provides a great opportunity for students to not only learn about the history of the Holocaust in much more depth, but to also get the opportunity to meet Holocaust survivors and interview them one-on-one, which is an unbelievable experience that's incredibly humbling and just, I think, really helps move you through your life, especially since so many students keep coming in that are going into the medical profession. And I find it even more beautiful because it really helps you get that sense of having an understanding of the patients that you deal with and what kind of background they all have. So we had 12 students participate in this internship, and what we're going to do is we're going to invite each student up and have them talk a little bit about what the experience was like taking part in the program, but most importantly, what it was like when they got to interview their Holocaust survivor and what their reaction was to it. Okay, so we're going to start today with Luis Hernandez. So I'm going to have you come up here. I just want to tell you a little bit about Luis before we start. So he is part of the C-STEP program, which is the New York State Collegiate Science Technology Entry Program. And he applied to the internship because he wanted to learn more about the Holocaust, and he expressed regret to me that he didn't learn more about it in his studies previously. He also wanted to learn new skills about how to interview people, practices that he thought would be helpful because he wants to become a physician eventually, and he's on his way to this career. He actually, I was looking through your resume again, and he had an internship at Columbia University Medical Center, so I thought that was really wonderful. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Luis.
Okay, well, I want to start off by giving thanks to Dr. Flug and Ms. Berman for allowing me to be part of this internship. And I started learning about this internship, about the Holocaust when I was actually in high school. But in high school, we didn't really learn about it that much because, you know, they teach it to you probably like 2 or 3 days, but you don't really get knowledge about it. So it was really here when I took a history course during the summer that I learned more about the Holocaust. But then even in this course, we specifically spoke about Hitler's life opposed to the actual Holocaust. So then when my advisor actually told me about this internship, I thought it would be a great opportunity to come here, because then I can actually learn about the Holocaust from the perspective of a survivor, opposed to the perspective of just reading it from a historian's views in a book. And my survivor I interviewed was Ethel Katz, and she was from Eastern Poland at the time. And her story actually made me realize that there were people suffering from the Holocaust that wasn't just the gas chambers, because all we hear about is Hitler's rule, people dying in the gas chambers, but what about the other people that are suffering? She wasn't even in Germany, she was in Eastern Poland, and she was still being affected by it. And that's actually crazy, because I never knew that people outside of Germany were actually suffering from this. So I thought that was pretty crazy. And she had a pretty big family, just like me. She had a twin brother, she had 2 little twin brothers, she had an older sister, and she also had her mother and father prior to the war. That was what her family was comprised of. And when I spoke to her, she actually told me about how her life was just normal before the war. She went to school, she had friends, she used to play soccer. She even told me that she was a great goalie, and they used to argue about whose team she would be on. So that really goes to show a lot how her life just changed drastically the minute the war started. So she told me that Hitler's army came in July 5th, 1941, and everything changed for her, because for the first 3 days, the local Ukrainians, they started throwing away the holy books, they started killing the Jews, and then that's really when all of her traumatizing events started, because she told me that before any of this started, she was actually told about it, but she couldn't believe it. Because if somebody told you right now they were murdering your people, would you believe that? Until you actually see it, you will start to believe it. So yeah, once the war started, they rounded up all the men in the town, and they took her brother, and her brother was actually gunned down. That was the first person she lost in her family. And then a year later, the destruction of the Jews was actually sped up. That's when the Latvian soldiers were brought in, and they were hunted. And some of them were sent to labor camps, to gas chambers. They were just killed in the streets. And she was telling me how she had to hide in haystacks and ditches, and she was always on the run and scared for her life. And she told me that people think that Jews were just killed, but that wasn't really what happened, because she told me that Jews were fighting back. They wanted to die with respect and dignity, so they didn't just die like that. They actually fought the soldiers, they died with honor. And she told me how when she was in the city, her home, she saw corpses everywhere. There was blood everywhere. It was like really traumatizing for her. And she told me that most of her time she wasn't even home. She was just getting assisted by other people, that there were kind people. Like, you would think that it's almost all the Russians and all the Germans that wanted the Jews dead, but that's not necessarily true. There were people that risked their lives to actually help her. So the one that stood out to me the most was when she told me about this Polish guy and his wife, how they took her into their home. And like the only reason they had to leave was because the Polish man's wife actually was having an argument with a neighbor over an inch of land. So the neighbor got upset and told him, yeah, well, you're hiding Jews in your backyard, in your shade, in your house. And that was really messed up. So they had to leave because they were afraid of being discovered. And they were actually fortunate because her little brother found an attic in a little shack where children used to play. But then they also left because if there's children every day there, they had fear that they would be caught. So then they ended up going to an abandoned house, which they stayed there for a while, but they had to leave because the owner came back and was like, oh my God, what are you doing here? So then they left, and then they ended up just going back to their city home because they really had nowhere else to go. But when they went back to the city home, they realized that there was like almost no houses and they were lucky that their house was one of the few houses that was still standing there. But unfortunately, they were also discovered there. And she told me about how they were trying to escape because when the soldiers came, then her dad was pushing her and her siblings out the window, and she started running, but she was struck in the head and fell to the floor. And when she woke up, she saw a soldier's boots. So she just closed her eyes. And the soldier didn't really kill her, and I think it's because since she was hit in the head, she was probably bleeding severely, so he assumed she was just bleeding to death. So he just let her lay there bleeding. And her family wasn't actually lucky because they were all caught and they were also gunned down. And after this, I believe she told me she met a young boy that actually took her to his house so she can stay with his family for a while. And she told me how this was like one of the sweetest young men she's ever met because he helped her bury her family with a proper burial. And he told her that it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter where you're from, everybody deserves a proper burial. So soon after, because she can't stay with them for a while because there was always people hunting her, she ended up finding a false wall in an attic, so she stayed there for a while. Like for 3 months, I believe she'd stayed there, 3 or 4 months, without food and water. I mean, she did get water because there was a time where the house she was in was occupied by soldiers, and she had got out to get water and went back to the attic. She was fortunate that they left long enough for her to get water to survive that amount of time, even though she was starving.
Yeah, Louis.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. You've met Ethel, and
yeah,
I've known her for about 7 years, and an amazingly dynamic woman. You look at her today, and she's about this tall, a little old lady, and you suddenly realize that that when you are looking at these people, I always would tell the interns, when you interview someone, you're not looking at someone who's 80 or 90 years old. You're interviewing someone who was your age 70 years ago. So you look at that person. What is the most important thing you're going to remember about Ethel?
Well, I mean, I wrote it here so you guys can all see it. Hatred is lethal. That's what she really wanted me to get out of it, because that's the only reason all of this happened, because of hatred. It wasn't just for fun or for the hell of it. Yeah.
Okay, could you hold that up again, because we got to get this on. That becomes very important. It's amazing, and you're all going to go through this experience when youth had, but when you see the survivors come in here, we have a survivors meeting, you're going to say it's a grandma and grandpa's club. Everybody is walking in that way, but they were your age at that time, younger when this was happening. So, Louis, what I'd like to do, we have something, we always go ahead and present to our interns a citation. This is a unique citation. And Gloria, would you like to come up? One of the survivors who used to be part of our survivors, who unfortunately died 2 years ago?
Last year.
A year ago, was one by the name of Sally Sachs. And she was friendly with every one of the survivors you have met, but a very, very dynamic woman. Unfortunately, she became sick and passed away, but her family got together and they have gone ahead and donated to the Kupferberg Holocaust Center funds to continue this internship project. And what we have here is the internship, and I'll give you a copy of this so you can have your own. It says the Sally Sachs Memorial Internship Project presented to Louis Hernandez, and you see a picture of Sally on there. And I knew Sally. Sally was one of the toughest women I ever met. I always had the feeling that if Sally came into this room right now and sat down at the table and put her arm up like this and said, "Come on, Arthur, let's see if you can push my hand down, I'll arm wrestle with you," she'd probably win. She was that powerful. So we'd like to present this to you, and smile for the camera. One of the very good things we have going at the Holocaust Center, aside from Marissa, is the fact that we have people who outside the college realize the work that we do. And a lot of the work we do requires a lot of work on our part, a lot of imagination, but it also requires funding. And we have two people with us today. The third is on the way. And I'd like to introduce one of them to you, and then I'll introduce the other. From the New York State Assembly, Assemblyman Ed Braunstein.
Thank you very much, Dr. Flug. I just want to thank you for all the work that you do. I'm very proud to have Queens Community College in my district. And I come to this program, I think about twice a year you do it, and I try to come every time. And it's a very powerful experience. You know, you can read about the Holocaust in a textbook, but there's nothing like looking into somebody's eyes and hearing them tell the stories themselves. I also want to thank Sally Sachs' family for sponsoring this program. It's a great way to remember your family member. And you know, as Dr. Flug said at the beginning, you know, you're more than an intern, you're an insurance policy. And it's very important that, you know, it's not easy for a Holocaust survivor to dig down and express what they experience. A lot of times people want to forget it, they don't want to talk about it. But the reason that they're expressing what happened to you is that you can express it to your children and to your friends, and to make sure that something like this never happens again. It's amazing what human people were capable of during the Holocaust. And we need to make sure that we learn from that experience and we spread the message around the world that no matter how difficult times get and things like that, there's never any reason to engage in an activity like that. So, Dr. Flug, once again, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. And I want to thank the interns for taking part. And also the survivors who aren't here, we owe them a debt of gratitude for their bravery. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now also another very important, but who I think I've known forever, is State Senator Toby Stavisky. Please, come on.
Thank you, Dr. Flug. As I was listening to Lewis's presentation, it could have been me. It could have been you. My husband lost his grandparents in the Holocaust. They never left Poland, and he never knew his grandparents. As a result, his father came to the United States, in the 1920s, I guess it was. But if my family hadn't left Germany when they did, my mother's family, 100 years before the Holocaust, it could have been me. It could have been any one of us. Because the Holocaust is not only, it's not restricted to Nazi Germany. Armenia, they had the genocide, the Ukraine, all of these other countries, but never on the scale of what happened in Germany. The second point I want to make is that Dr. Flug and I think we both were high school social studies teachers in another lifetime. And there's one thing about reading about the Holocaust in a book, and it's required. New York State education law requires the teaching of the Holocaust. But a book is sort of two-dimensional. You are seeing something real and live. It's what we call primary sources. You're talking to people who experienced the Holocaust. And it's something that has to be transmitted from generation to generation so that we don't have recurrences of it. There was an interesting story in today's New York Times. You saw the story.
Once a teacher, always a teacher.
May I introduce not one of my former students, but Assemblyman Webb. Story in today's New York Times. It says Israel's efforts to limit the use of Holocaust terms raises free speech questions. Take a look at it. It's an interesting story because you have the conflict of a terrible occurrence versus the ability to say what you wish. And I remember a debate in the New York State Senate about 4 or 5 years ago when one of my colleagues used the term Holocaust to describe a a situation totally unrelated, something that he was very opposed to. And I remember vividly there were two of us who jumped up on the floor of the Senate, Senator Liz Kruger from Manhattan and I, and we said, we find that comparison to be outrageous. And he apologized. But these are terms that you've got to get to know, so that, as you said, hate is lethal, and we remember that for future generations. So again, I thank you very much for your
Thank you.
stewardship, really.
Thank you.
And being transparent.
Toby, thank you very much. And lastly, before we get back, I want to introduce a good friend of mine, a former boss of mine, New York State Assemblyman David Weprin.
Hi, I'm no stranger to this center or to Queensborough. When I was in the city council for 8 years, I represented Queensborough, and I represented Queensborough, I guess my first 2 or 3 years in the assembly, and it's currently in Assemblyman Braunstein's district, but I have such a strong feeling towards Queensborough and this Holocaust Center in particular, because I was actually, when I was in the city council, got the Holocaust Center started with the first capital project. The fact that Arthur Flug was my chief of staff at the time probably helped a little bit, but we certainly, at the time, the Holocaust Center didn't have this beautiful building. It just was in the basement of the administration building, I guess, and it was really not visited by too many visitors because it was small. It was almost like a small library in the basement. And Queensborough had a vision that Eduardo Marti, the prior president, and Diane Call, the current president, who had been in part of the administration back then as well, and had been for many years, had a vision to bring the Holocaust Center into the open, to have this beautiful building, and it really came to fruition. And I'm very proud that it's the only the only Holocaust Center in a public university anywhere in New York State, right here at Queensborough Community College, being part of the CUNY system. So I think it's very important. I know you probably, did you hear from Ed? Did you speak yet?
Yeah.
You heard from Assemblyman Braunstein and from Senator Stavisky, but it's so important that we teach and we let people know that we can't tolerate any hate. And of course, we know a history of various genocides outside of the Holocaust, but certainly nothing that even resembles the Holocaust, killing of 6 million Jews and others as well, millions of others. So nothing compares to that, I think, in the history of the world. And we of course have to remember that event and teach that event, least we forget and repeat history. So I think we have official assembly citations as well. Are we doing that afterwards?
Yeah,
or?
yeah,
We're going to do that afterwards. You'll all get multiple citations to hang on your wall.
David, thank you very much. Now, one person who was supposed to be here today, also an assemblywoman, a newly elected assemblywoman, and one of the first things she did when she was elected was to come visit the Holocaust Center, and that's Assemblymember Nili Rozek. She's not here today because, unfortunately, she's at a meeting, but she did set someone down, and Megan Kane is her community relations person. Megan, why don't you just come up and say a few words?
Hi, everyone. Unfortunately, Assemblywoman Rozek cannot be here today. She is stuck in a committee meeting, which is not as exciting as this. But she did want me to come here and express her congratulations today on finishing this important program, and also to express how great it is that we have a resource like this center here in Queens. And she does hope that you do take forward the lessons that you have learned here today, bring it into your communities, bring it into your lives, and just remember how important this experience is and to never forget. So thank you very much for inviting us here today, and I look forward to hearing the rest of your presentation.
Megan, thank you very much. And finally, last one, no more speeches, no more speeches. But one thing that's very important, each one of these members of the Assembly and the Senate have come down here to offer you citations. This is something that you write on your resume when you're applying for another college and you're applying for a job, that I got a citation from the New York State Senate. I got a citation from the New York State Assembly. That's important. And that doesn't come easy. You get those when you work. So what we want to do here is we'd like to take a group picture because we have to prove you got them, okay? So I'd like everybody to come up here. Everyone come up here.
Okay, so we're going to continue on. Thank you to everyone. So the next student that we're going to have speak is Balaj. So come on up. So let me tell you a little bit about him. So he is studying business administration here at the college, and I found him to be a very interesting applicant for this program because he's an international student, came from the United Kingdom, and he was looking for an opportunity to learn more about other cultures as well as meet new people here at the campus and learning more about our culture here in America. He also wanted to make a difference in the community, and I was so impressed to find out about him that when he was in London, he worked on this campaign called Why Do, that was a community impact initiative to bridge the gap between adults and children, which I thought was really interesting. So, Balaj?
Thank you, Marisa. Well, first of all, my name is Balaji. I'd first like to thank Dr. Fluke and Marisa for this, opportunity for this internship. Well, you said it's not an internship; it's more like an insurance policy, which I do believe that's quite true. First of all, I wanted to point out that I didn't get to meet my survival because I think the timing, I don't know, there was a bit of a timing issue, and towards the time it was a festive season and she was too busy with her family, so I had to do the interview. I had to do the interview on the phone and just conduct everything, and it's quite a good thing because we both have so much in common. Because she was part of the kinder transport. I don't know if you guys know about the kinder transport, which was a situation whereby they got a few kids from Germany to transport them to England. And once I started getting to speak to her, I found out that even she both has the same name as my girlfriend. And obviously we just spoke and we did really have a lot in common because she lived in places that I lived as well. For example, like London. And once we started talking, she told me she left. She lived in Berlin, Germany, and then she was part of the kinder transport. She didn't want to touch too much on the subject because I was asking her quite a few questions. I was asking her quite a few questions, and I asked her about experience. The story was she was happy with the family. She was happy. She was 13 years old when she left Berlin, and it was such a bitter experience because when you can hear someone speak and you can hear the more the passion, and she was the more I don't want to use the word hate, but more hate towards the Germany, but I don't really want to touch too much on that subject because I want to be on the positive side. But her dad had a business, and mom was helping her dad. They both had a good family. While the whole war thing and the whole Holocaust thing was going on, our parents both decided for her that it was better she left because they don't want her to die. She had a brother, she had a brother, by the way, and the brother ended up going to Leeds in England. Leeds is another state entirely, and she stayed in London. So I asked her what kind of intrigued me the most. I asked her while she was in London, did she enjoy that stay? And she told me no, she didn't, because the war was still going on then, because they were still having bombing, they were still having bombs still thrown. She lived through the Blitz. So I was now thinking okay, as a kid, you didn't only go through the war in Germany because things were bad enough in Germany. In London, she had to be separated from her family, whereby she didn't get to see them for at least another 7 years, and she still didn't have a peacefulness of mind, even though she wasn't with her parents. So it was more like ASU here, then ASU there. And then I asked her, did she keep in touch with her parents? She said, yeah, she did keep in touch with her parents. She was writing letters, back and forth with her mom, back and forth with her dad. As the story went on, I think her mom got to live till the age of 75 because they migrated to from Berlin, Germany. They migrated to United States, and later on, after I think she lived in England for I think about another 4 or 5 years. She lived in England, and she came here to meet her parents, and it was really joyous for her. She was really happy. The most intriguing, another thing that intrigued me the most, in which the question that I asked her, did she have, has she forgiven the Germans for what they've done to her? And I really wanted to ask that question, and she was a bit wary about, how to answer that. She was like, she doesn't really have, hatred towards the new generation, because the new generation really don't know anything, and they're quite innocent. And she didn't really have no hate towards them, but she can't really forgive them. So what I can take from this internship personally is that as a kid, and while I was doing our internship, Marisa taught us that as a kid, you have to know what to impact, what to teach the kids, basically, what you put in their brain as they're growing up, because they're an empty vessel, and if you put love inside it, they grow up with love, and if you put hate inside it, they grow up with hate. So as a kid, the Germans kind of scarred her, and she was so bitter about it, and she was, but as times move on, she didn't even try to hold no grudges. She just moved on, which I thought that was quite strong. And I haven't been able to tell you too much about myself, but as a kid myself, I left my home country, which was Nigeria, which was Nigeria, from Africa. My dad brought me to England as a kid, and this time last year, I didn't really want to touch too much on this subject because it's a bit too much, but this time last year I was incarcerated in England, and because I was there for 15 years of my life. I went through secondary school, I went through college, and I went through everything, and I overstayed my visit. So I was incarcerated because I have no legal leave to be in the country. So they did incarcerate me, and I know what it feels like for you to have your freedom taken away from you. I know that feeling, because I had so much grudge against the English people, but at the end of the day, the English people brought me up, and I had parents, I had family there, in which that's another subject entirely that I didn't want to touch on. But what I want to say that touched me again was, as a man in this life, if you have an opportunity to change things, you should change it for good. Because, for example, the two people that mainly that was really highlighted in this Holocaust internship for me was the man that was called Help Saved how many kids, what was his name? And
Nicholas Winton.
Nicholas Winton, yeah, thank you. Because I had to email Marisa, I really want to go through this clip, because that day nobody really saw me, but I literally shared a teardrop, but nobody saw that. But that story was so touching, because I feel this man, he just had the opportunity to save this little group of people, and look at they ended up bringing another generation upon generation upon generation. Then that's a man of courage, and is a legend to me, because whatever he's done, he's made a big impact in just those small people's life. Then Hitler, on the other side, he made another impact, but then another negative impact. So, and that's really not a good thing, because a lot of people have a lot of hate for him. A really large amount of people had a lot of hate for him, and that's not a good thing. That's not what you want to be known by. like you should leave a good legacy, and that's just what I've learned from this Holocaust internship.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, so let's continue on a little bit. So our next student intern is Nazia, and unfortunately, Nazia wasn't able to be here today because it's actually the death anniversary of both her grandfather and her brother-in-law. So she was home with family today, but she asked me to read a short passage summarizing her response from the survivor she interviewed, who was Hannah Deutsch, who's here with us today. So this is really a letter from her to you. So Nazia said, I met Hannah Deutsch through the QCC Holocaust Internship program. I don't have words to explain my feelings. Hannah definitely is very courageous, strong, and a positive woman. I admire her for her strength. It takes a lot of strength to say bye to your family, while knowing that you might never see them again. It is very painful. Hannah left everything when she moved to England through the Tinder transport. No words can replace the loss that happened under World War II. It's the unfortunate reality of human history, but I'm glad that it's over. I am proud that you never gave up on your education. You were a fighter and very brave. You served in the military and fought against Hitler, and that is a victory. You helped other people in need. Unlike other people who turned their back on you and on your family, you were there to support those who needed your help. I know how it feels when someone turns their back on you. It's an awful experience and unforgettable also. I am sorry that you went through this, but I can't explain how proud I am of you. You are an inspiration for all of us. Let me give you this slide.
Let me introduce Hannah. This is the lady that she's talking about. And here you see a sweet little grandmother. She is one tough gal. This is a lady who, when she escaped from Germany on the Kinder transport, you correct me if I'm wrong, came to England, and without her parents, because her parents were not allowed out. It was like a joke. We're going to get rid of 10,000 Jews. Who's going to take them? Oh, you want to take them? Good, but you can't go with your mother and father. You know, there are times when you were kids, you say, good, get away from mom and dad. I'm on my own, but not here. And Hannah took up nursing when she came to England. And in England, when she became a nurse, she told me one thing that absolutely shook me. And dealing with the Holocaust, you hear all of this, it doesn't get to you too much. What really shook me was that her job was to come down to the railroad station when they were bringing troops over from the European mainland to England who had been wounded and seriously wounded. And she said there were times when she came down there and the trains came in, and she waited for the soldiers to get out. All they did was remove body parts of people who had been killed and sent back. She came to the United States, was married, has a family, has a number of grandchildren, and is one of the strongest supporters. She will never say no. If I say, Hannah, can you be here at midnight tonight? I'll meet you at midnight. I will come at midnight, and she'll say, you know, I've been here for a half hour, Arthur. Where have you been? Can't you hurry it up a little? So this is Hannah, okay?
Okay, so the next student we're going to have come up is Panem. Okay, so she is a health sciences / physician's assistant major here, and she applied to the internship to learn more about the Holocaust, which is true for many of our students. And she has a very strong background in volunteering and working with the elderly, which is wonderful. And she also expressed an interest in learning about the experiences that people carry with them. And she also wanted to improve her writing skills, which is always good. But she also is a very talented artist, and she's brought in her journal to show me a few times, especially things that she was inspired to create from our workings here. And her survivor was Ellen Zilka.
So my survivor unfortunately wasn't here. They weren't invited, so she's not here right now. But she's a very brave woman. She doesn't believe that she was a survivor because she thought that she didn't go through so many things as other survivors have been through. So she told me about her brother mainly. Her brother and her got separated when she was 9 and her brother was 5. So she told me her brother was very young when he got separated from the family. They were also in Kinder transport rescue mission by this man named Nicholas. 10,000 kids were taken out from Germany. she left when she was 9. Her brother left first, so he got transported to UK. He was in a Jewish family, but when she got transported, her parents, when she was on the train, her parents came and they got onto the train and they went to the next stop to see her, to say goodbye. So she wasn't sure if that was the last time, because her parents promised that they were going to be there, they're going to come as soon as they can. So she went and she was transported to this nursing home because there were no more families that were able to take her in. She was in a nursing home with this old lady who was very, very sweet with her, and she got her a girl who she went to school with to live with her because there was only old ladies there. So, you know, you're growing up, you're only 9, so she was with this other girl. And so far she told me that she said that there's nothing important about her story because she just came to US once she grew up, but her brother went through a lot. She went to visit her brother because he was very young and he was scared, and even though he was with a Jewish family, he missed his family. He was vulnerable. That age is very, like, you're a little kid, you don't know what's happening. I have a 5-year-old sister, I have a 6-year-old sister as well. So I know how they are. They're little kids and they're very, like, you know, young. So they don't know. So I know if I ever got separated from my sister, I would just go crazy because I love her a lot. She's like my whole family. I raised her basically because my mom has one of them is 8 and one of them is 6. So my mom got really sick from the hospital, so I had to take care of my sister when she came home. So I would feed her, I'd clean her up, I do everything with her, and I'd even go to sleep with her. Sometimes I'd take days off from school when I was in high school just to stay with her because I used to love her a lot. So I just take days off and then just stay with her. So she loves me a lot. She adores me as well. I would take her everywhere with me. So if I ever were to lose her, I don't think I'd be able to live through it. I just don't think I'd be able to go through it. So when she had to leave her brother, I felt really sad for her because she told me how her brother looked up to her, how she was an idol for her brother. So she went and visited her brother. Her brother went through a lot of things. In the end, he gave up and committed suicide. But Ellen continued on, and that's why she's a survivor. She went on. Even though she doesn't believe that she's a survivor, I believe she's very strong. She's a brave soul. And what she told me that she wanted me to remember was to always cherish your family and never hate anyone, which I take from, because if anyone doesn't like you, doesn't mean you have to be the same. You can be nice to them, and I believe that everyone's good in heart. No one's bad. Hitler, unfortunately, was a different story, but I believe everyone's nice. So that's basically it.
Okay, so our next intern is Genesis. Okay, so Genesis is majoring in dance here at QCC, and she interviewed Lena Gorin. Are you going to stand? Okay. So she eventually wants to get a degree in history, and she's had an interest in the Holocaust since she took a Holocaust literature class when she was in 8th grade. So it's really impressive that that kind of stuck with her for so long. And she holds a particular interest in the access granted to Jewish refugees in the Dominican Republic. And she told me right at the beginning that she wants to one day write a book about this, which I was so impressed with. So this is.
Thank you, Marissa and Mr. Flug, for this opportunity and this internship, and all of the rest of the interns and people here. I think that in this internship, what the first thing you have to do is you have to learn about other people and learn about yourself too. This is not just like an experience that you have through one person, it's an experience you have through other people as well. My Holocaust survivor was Lena Gorin, and she's going to turn 84 years old next month on the 14th.
Just a little louder, I'm sorry.
And thinking of a person who was born on Valentine's Day, you would think that the person is full of love, and that is actually just the way she is. She was 10 years old when she had to leave her country. Her country was Greece. She was born there, and it was 1940, and she had to leave her country because the Germans had invaded. At that time, her family did not know where to go and where she would go at all. She lost her grandparents, she lost her aunts and uncles, and all her cousins. Thankfully, her brother, her sister, and her mother and father survived. 5 years into that, she had moved to the mountains where she stayed in a little church for monks. And she said that it was only as big as a large closet in your room. It wasn't that big where you can stay and be comfortable. And it wasn't just her family of 5, it was 80 people that had left Greece to go there. And she spent 10 years there. When she turned 13, because she was a female, she started menstruating, and she thought that it was really hard for her to live that life as a female because she never heard about that. She never knew what a sanitary napkin was and how to clean yourself and how to stay alive like that. Unfortunately, because of that, everyone there, all 80 people, they actually got malaria. Fortunately, people, Gentiles, as she said, were great people to her, came and they gave her medication. After the war ended in 1945, she then moved to America with her family. And here in America, her mother was a seamstress and her father was a rabbi. Her brother later became a rabbi as well. She worked as a seamstress and she also owned a car company. What she told me was that it took courage, willingness, and determination to move forward. She said, I'm sorry. Said that it took willingness because it was very hard for her to come from a different country into a country that you didn't know. She said that she spoke Greek, Spanish, but she didn't speak English, and she spoke a little bit of French. And when she came here, no one spoke any of the languages that she spoke. So it was really hard for her to make it in this life. And she showed me that if you want anything, you have to set that goal and go for it. It's not just about, I have to see tomorrow, I have to live for tomorrow, because today is all we have. We do live for the next day, but it's about right now, and it's about what can you do for other people now. It's not about what happened yesterday and how can that affect me. It's about I need to live today so I can move forward and tomorrow can be a better day. She showed me that if you want something, you set that goal and you aim for it. And when you succeed that goal, then you aim another goal and you keep going forward and forward and forward. Now, I thought when I first met her I wouldn't be able to relate to her because I didn't live through a war. And I started thinking, and I said, well, a terrorist attack in 9/11, I lived through that. And even though my family wasn't affected, I know other people in my town were. And I said, maybe I can relate to her. She started telling me about her life and how she was an entertainer and how she used to sing opera. And she goes around in senior citizens' homes and synagogues and she sings. And I thought, well, I'm a dance major and I'm always studying with people who sing and dance and act. And that was one similarity. She told me that she got married and then she got divorced and remarried to a man who she really loved, and she lived with him for 10 years. She showed me wedding photos of herself and where she wore a blue dress. In the picture, I noticed that behind her was a painting. That same painting my father had gave my mother when they first got married. And I thought, this must be a sign from God telling me that people share souls. It's not just I'm a person and you're a person. We share the same soul. We have a connection. And it's not necessarily reincarnation. It's that we have a connection because we're all brothers and sisters. We both come from the same place. Even though we were born in different countries and we have different last names and different family members, we're all together, we're all united. And she also had told me that 13 years ago, she competed in a beauty contest. And I know a few years ago, I did a beauty contest as well. And just a bunch of similarities kept adding forward. And I sat back and I thought, she was going to turn 84 next month. And what about next year? She'll be 85. And then I'm going to be 19. And it's such a different age gap and it's such a different era that we're living in. But we have so many similarities that we can relate to each other. And it's not just about it's your life and it's my life. We're all together. And it's about unity. And she told me that what is one goal that I would like to have in my life? And I sat back and I was like, I don't even know. Because the goals that she set for herself were so high that my goals looked so tiny and so puny. I'm just trying to graduate from college and she didn't even achieve that. But of all the other things she did, it doesn't complement to what I did. She said that right now she's worth over $1 million. And I believe that. She said that she owned so many businesses while she was getting older because she wanted 5 things for herself. She wanted to get married, have children, have a house, have money, and live the best life she could. She said her philosophy in life was to live life to the fullest and live life from one day to the next, not worrying about what's next to come, but what's right now. And I think that that's what she wants me to teach everyone else when she passes and when she continues to live on in a different life in a different place. And I feel that even though we don't believe in reincarnation, that people do make an impact in our lives, and different souls have different impacts on everyone. And if one person can make a difference in my life, then I can make a difference in someone else's, and it will continue forward and forward and forward. And that is the message I give to you today.
Our next speaker is Kayla. So Kayla is majoring in science and math here, and she's actually also in the C-STEP program. She applied to this internship because, just like many others, she wanted to expand her knowledge of the Holocaust, as well as to enhance her interpersonal skills as a means for bettering herself in the medical field, which she wants to go into, and she wants to deal directly with patients. And she told me that she expressed an interest in World War II since she was in 6th grade, and she had an interest in the complexity behind how the survivors managed to live on with their memories. So she interviewed Herta Zieberman.
Yeah. Because I was like pronouncing it wrong before. I was like, hey, Zieberman. I'd like to thank Marissa and Dr. Flug and also Francesca from the C-STEP program, because without her, I pretty much wouldn't have known that this existed. Well, like Marissa said, like I was exposed to World War II in 6th grade. My my teacher came in, it was like, by the end of the year, you know how like most teachers, like they don't really have a lesson plan, so they just let you watch movies throughout the whole like month and stuff. So he put on Band of Brothers, and I remember he was really hesitant of showing us, I'm not sure if you guys seen the movie, but there was a part, like, I think it was like 30 minutes that into the movie that they show like the concentration camps, and it was so scary. Like, as a 6th grader, like you never see any of this. Like, you're just used to cartoons and everything's like rainbows and unicorns. So like when I saw this, I was really impacted, and it really changed my perspective. Like, wow, this kind of thing could really happen, and it did. So I just kept asking questions, and he wouldn't really go into it. So I always had like a gap. And every history class that I would take, I would always ask more questions about the Holocaust, but no one really wanted to go into it. So I was really happy that I joined this internship, and I'm really happy that I got actually to interview Herta, because she was just so welcoming. Like, as soon as I entered her house, she was just like, oh, sit down, I have some munchkins for you. And she just like went on and started talking about her life, and I felt honored, because normally people that go through things like that, they're really hesitant, they don't really want to live through it again. So, but she's like really strong, and she just told me off the bat that, well, my family, where we lived, was at the border of Poland. She lived on the western side, and she said that her town was at the edge where, like, basically you could, if you walk a few steps, you'll be in Austria, and then you could be in Germany a few steps later. So she told me that her town was actually the first to be invaded by the German soldiers. And some people say that she was lucky because she didn't, some people think that she was lucky because she didn't go through the concentration camps or anything like that. But she still did go through a lot, because she had to work as a factory worker, and she worked alongside with other German women that were forced to do this kind of labor. But her kind of labor was more intense, I feel, because she would have to follow the soldiers around and be among these guys that like are treating, like basically killing her own people, and she has to like make clothes for them, support them, and just do everything to help them out, when in her mind she's just like, why should I help you out? And she told me that she would walk about 10 miles every day, and they literally had to get like, the women would stitch together like clothes and stuff to make like shoes for themselves. And at one point, some women would try to devise plans to like leave and try to like find a better future, and they would get gunned down right in front of them, and just to teach them a lesson. And when they would be walking, they would have to go through these small towns, and these people, like Austrians and some of the Polish people that they would go by, they looked at them like they were diseased, because they've never seen people dressed in that kind of condition. they were really hesitant to approach them, and when they did, the German soldiers would make it very clear to them that if anyone even like approached them or helped them, they would get killed. So she told me that some German soldiers would make an example and actually tell women to line up, and in front of these townspeople, they would just shoot them off the bat and leave them there and tell the townspeople, well, if you help them out or give them any kind of support, we're going to shoot you right in front of your family and everything. So no one really wanted to help them out, and they just sat there and like watched them pass by the town and whatnot. She was fortunate enough to actually, towards the end, to escape. She told me that she had actually brought a friend with her, and that she was kind of like the leader, because her friend was really like, she was really hesitant on leaving, but she was like, look, if we don't leave, we're gonna die here, and if we do leave and we died, you know, with honor, because we did leave and whatnot. And so she told me that she went and escaped, and they went into like a graveyard, and I'm not sure what it's called, those little like homes, I guess, that they put some bodies in. But she said that she found one of those open, and they hid under an autopsy table. And she said that one of the soldiers, female soldiers, actually spotted her, but they just had this connection, and they looked at each other, and it was really bizarre, because I'm like, I would have thought at that point the lady would have just been like, okay, we're gonna kill you now. But she just looked at her and then turned around and killed a few other of the women that actually escaped that were following her and her friend. So, and like, I found that a little weird, but she eventually escaped out of there, and they found a barn. And she said that because she was Poland, like she lived in Poland and she knew Polish, that these people inside the barn actually, they opened up to her and they told her like, okay, we'll take care of you, because they didn't know she was a Jew, and they didn't really know what was going on. So they were really kind enough, but eventually like they found out, because their son went to one of the major cities, and they found out what was going on. So they were like, well, you can't stay here, because, you know, I have a family too, and unfortunately, like, you're not my family, and I can't really do much for you, but, you know, so you have to go. And she told me that they gave him directions, and she ended up in Austria, and she told me that this family with 4 boys and a little girl, their little sister, actually housed them. And she told me how her feet were so swollen from walking so much that she couldn't walk, and these guys would pick her and her friend up physically, take them to the bathroom, you know, wipe their business and everything. And these people would just be so nice. Like, you would never think a stranger would come here and like pick you up and take you to the bathroom and all this stuff. And they were so humble about it. And they took care of her and her friend for a few months. And her friend eventually married one of the guys that were like nice to them. But she ended up leaving, and she went back to Poland to see if any of the things in her home remained. And she found out everything got sold to some family. She didn't even know where all her stuff was at, and she found out her parents and everyone died. She was the only survivor in her family. And she eventually just went back to Austria, where she met her husband, which was also a Holocaust survivor, and they had their first child there. I mean, her story was like really remarkable, because it's just like, she told me that she's a big believer in faith. She just says, she kept saying throughout the whole story, like, things happen for a reason. She's like, if I had tried to escape in the beginning, I probably would have died, but why I wanted to escape towards the end, I don't know. Something just pushed me to it, and I just ran, which is something I also believe. Something she also told me to take, like a take-home message, was that you can't judge other people based on like their actions. Like, because she said that the whole connection she had with that German soldier, the female German soldier, for some reason she felt it was a little weird, but she felt like she kind of like she had an unspoken agreement with her, like, okay, like, let me go, and, you know, nothing was seen here or whatnot. So she said that she doesn't have any hatred towards the Germans, and that she right now is just living her life to the fullest, and that's what you should do on a regular basis anyway. So yeah.
Great, thank you. So our next student speaker is going to be Wasif. So he is studying business administration here at the college, and again, he applied to the internship to learn more about the Holocaust. But I found it was very interesting that he was very active in his home country of Bangladesh in educating the community about hate crimes. And he expressed his interest in learning more about genocides and other world atrocities to help aid him in spreading the awareness in the future. So he interviewed Ellen Zilka. Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Wasif Khan. Because before I start saying anything, I don't want to miss the opportunity to thank Ms. Lisa Berman and Dr. Fluke for letting me be a part of this internship. Well, I had interviewed Ms. Ellen Zilka, and I believe already Panam told her story. But there's really something I want to get off my chest. A 10-year-old girl and a 5-year-old boy had to leave their country, have to leave their friends, family, everyone, just because of one reason: they were Jewish. That's the only reason I see when I interviewed her. Well, if I'm not wrong, the only proven and declared reason of Hitler about Jewish was they were businessmen and they were making a lot of money. And I choose business for my career, and I want to make a lot of money. That make me a criminal or something like that? And what about Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg? According to Hitler, they should be someone similar to evil or something. And one more thing, I heard this more than several times. No matter what, Hitler was a great leader for Germany. But I don't think so. He was nothing but a loser. Because of one main reason, we all know economy is the backbone of any country. If he was right, Jewish was making a lot of money, he could have used that money for Germans' good things or something like that, but he didn't do that. All he was doing, that was nothing but authorized racism with his dignity. And after I interviewed Ms. Ellen Zilka, I felt so relieved, and that totally changed the way I look at things now. First of all, I don't have any complaint on my life right now because I'm so lucky. I have never been through that kind of situation. And I was asked to imagine myself into her place, but I'm sorry I can't do that because I don't have that much gut or ability to go through that kind of things. And one last thing I want to mention that is, maybe it's gonna sound weird. I asked Miss Ellen, what will be your third wish if you get a genie from the Aladdin? And she was like, I don't want anything for myself. I wish I could undo everything from my brother's life that would happen for Hitler. Well, I have an elder sister, and I don't think my own sister loved me that much. And the thing is, before I start this internship, for me, success is all about money, being famous or something like that. But I don't believe that anymore. After I've interviewed Ellen Zilka, she had been through a lot of things. She had been through all possible worst circumstance anyone can ever had, but still she's with us. Whoever call her name, he or she has to call her name with dignity, with respect and honor, and that's the meaning of life. And I am new to this country, and the word Holocaust don't exist in my country, and that's true. I have learned a lot of things from this internship, and for me, Miss Ellen's life is like a mirror. I'm not gonna. And the thing is, I don't have a single clue. I don't have the word to express her story, because it's more about emotions, more about feelings, more about a deep, dark story. So, thank you. That's all about.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. So our next student's going to be Stereo. Okay. So Stereo is studying liberal arts here at the college with a concentration in film and television. And he applied to the internship because he loves history, and he is very into World War II. And he was also interested because both his maternal grandparents were orphaned during the war, and he wanted to develop this greater understanding of what had happened. And he is also part of the ASAP program here. So he interviewed Sam Wodarski. Okay.
Hello everybody, I'm Stereo, and like Ms. Birdman said, Marissa, I like history, right? And I like film and television, so I'm really into storytelling. That's what I kind of love in life. And part of the reason I took this internship, beside what Miss Marissa said, was that I wanted to learn a really great story. And what better chance to learn a really great story about history than actually talk to someone that lived through it. And I got that opportunity with Mr. Sam Wadowski. And, well, he's not here with me today, but Mr. Sam Wadowski had a really amazing story to tell, and I'm really glad that I got to hear it from him. There was like all these different amazing moments from his story that he told me about, like how he went to the ghettos, to the concentration camp, to liberation. He could remember all the dates and when it happened, and I was just amazed that he could remember this with such great sharpness in his eyes. He had these great blue eyes. He like really great. He remembers everything off the top of his head. And I speak of his eyes because while I was interviewing him, looking at his eyes, it kind of reminded me a bit of my grandfather, who also had like kind of this sharpness in his eyes that you really don't see a lot in many people today. But the one thing that really stood out during this whole interview with Mr. Wadowski was he was really grateful that he got to live. He was really grateful that for his family that he had now, that he got the chance to come to America. And being an immigrant myself, I'm also really grateful for coming to this country myself. And it kind of reminded me sort of like my grandparents. They were always like really happy people and just like really grateful. And being 18 years old, I can be a little naive sometimes, I'll be honest about it. So interviewing Mr. Wadowski, it was kind of like this coming of age experience for me where I learned like I should really be more grateful for my friends, my family, Miss Birdman, Dr. Flute, Queensboro, my fellow interns, and just life in general. And that's kind of what I've really learned from this experience, is to just be more grateful for what you have in life, because you really don't know when it's going to be taken away from you, and hopefully it won't be taken away from you. And sorry, my heart is beating. And that sort of really is what that one word, grateful, just described my whole experience of learning about the Holocaust and Mr. Wadowski and my grandparents and just everything. Just be more grateful in life, and that's kind of what I want to take away from it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And your certificate. So next we're going to have Tigran. Bring him up. And since Hannah's here, would you like to join him at the table? That'd be wonderful. I'll move this out of the way for you. Okay. So Tigran is studying digital art and design here at the college. And he was looking for this internship to help him with, build up his resume for future jobs. And he was also interested in developing his ability to convey important stories through his artwork, since that's his focus. And I didn't realize this before I was looking at your resume again. He was awarded the Hanley Medal at the Metropolitan Museum of Art by the Art League of New York for excellence in art. So I'm excited to hear more about his artwork, because I haven't really through the course of this program. And he interviewed Hannah Deutsch. So, okay, good.
Okay, well, my name is Tigran Bogosian.
Speak up.
Okay. My name is Tigran Bogosian, and the survivor that I interviewed is Hannah Deutsch. Well, I guess just start with, she was born in Düsseldorf in Germany in 1922.
Keep it loud. Except on the dates of her age. Would you rather I go and sit there? It makes you nervous, I'm sitting.
No, it's fine. Her family moved to Bochum when she was 2 years old. Her family had no men since her father passed away. It was just mostly women in the family. And she just had her aunt and grandmother taking care of her and her sisters.
So she was part of the Kindertransport, right?
Oh yeah, so she was part of the Kindertransports. And while she was being transported with all the children, she was taking care of them as well. So I guess the reason for that is so the other children in the transport would not feel that much alone, and have someone to feel like that they're.
Okay. So we heard some of her story from Nazia. Do you want to maybe talk a little bit about what it was like interviewing her? Like, how did you feel when you heard her story?
Well, how I felt is that Hannah, well, she has a very strong soul, pretty much a saint. But take care of the kids, and after that, becoming a nurse and helping out the military with helping out the wounded soldiers, helping the battle against Germany.
So, and as an artist, right, how do you think that this will affect any work that you create? Do you feel like it will? I always ask him about his art, and he always has a hard time talking about it. But did you create anything as a result of this?
At the end of the internship, I asked for a picture of her in the military, and I took a few pictures of those, and I made a charcoal and pencil drawing of her.
Wow, that's amazing. So, I mean, tell us a little bit about this. You did it with charcoal. Why did you choose that picture of her to draw?
Well, when I asked for favorite moment, it was when she was in the military helping out people as a nurse.
Interesting. Okay, so you felt like this really summed up like the most important thing to her. Great.
Yes.
All right, wonderful. All right. Anything that she asked you to maybe take with you? Like, what will you remember the most from interviewing her? All right. Okay. Fair enough. think about that. Let us know. Do you think you'll create any other art that relates to what you learned from your interview?
Maybe not really, but this is just a good exercise to taking a real story and making content related to it.
Right, definitely. Okay, so you got what you wanted with this internship. You wanted to take a real story and make some art from it, so that's great. All right, wonderful. All right, so thank you so much. So our last student is Desiree. So you want to come up? Great, thank you, Hannah. So Desiree is studying liberal arts and science here at the college, and she's also part of the ASAP program here. And that's how she learned about the internship. I'm so impressed with her because aside from being a full-time student, she also works full-time, and I know how difficult that can be. So I always appreciated that you made it to our class sessions on Fridays. I know that was hard. I know that you were very interested in meeting actual survivors and hearing their stories directly, and that you wanted to take what you learned from the internship to educate others in the future. And I was looking at your resume before this started, and this didn't come up at all, but I thought it was so interesting that you attended the Institute of Culinary Education in New York, and you have a specialization in baking and pastry, and I'm kind of disappointed that you didn't bring anything in ever. Okay, so she interviewed Jane Kaibo.
Yes. I don't want to drag it on, but thank you for having me, Dr. Flug, Marissa, everyone. I interviewed Jane, and as soon as I met her, she actually volunteers here on Mondays. And as soon as I met her, she reminded me instantly of a combination of my grandma and my great-grandmother, because she was just this little woman, and as soon as you see her, she just lights up a room. She was just so happy to tell her story. And I came into the interview literally with questions, and I didn't ask any of them, because she just, as soon as she started talking, I was just so interested, I didn't want to cut her off at all. So I just sat there with my pencil, and I was just writing her story. And we probably met for maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, with a little bit of breaks in between. And as soon as she started telling me about her story, she made it very clear that she was not in a concentration camp, and she doesn't feel as though she was a survivor, because she didn't go through what a lot of people went through. Jane lives in Germany, and her father owned a store which was taken by Hitler and his people, and literally they went into her father's store one day and took everything and said, "This is our store now." So when that happened, they had nothing. Her father wanted to get out as soon as possible because he didn't know what was going to happen to them. So they had to apply for some sort of a visa or a passport for us to either go to China or Cuba. And while she wanted to go to China, her father wanted to go to Cuba. So it was a boat that would take them there. And in order to get those visas was so expensive. And it was her sister, her mother, her father. And one of Hitler's rules were they can't take a lot of money with them. So her father invested all of this money into these visas to get like VIP, to get the best that they can, and literally left with what she said would equal like around $7 now, because that's all that they could take, whatever they could fit in their suitcase, nothing of value, and a couple of dollars. So they went on the St. Louis, and on their way to Cuba. She said they were on sea for a couple of weeks, and she said that she never felt hate. She was educated. Just because she was Jewish, she never felt like she was treated any differently. And on the boat, there was a distinct separation between those who spent more money to get a different type of visa and those who didn't have the money. So she never met any of those people that did not have the money to have what she had, basically. And she brought out like 4 books when I met her, and she was showing me pictures of her and her family in the books, and their signatures when they went onto the boat. And she said that she felt that somewhat hatred when Cuba wouldn't let her in, well, everyone in, because the visa that her father had purchased wasn't valid. So basically they bought something that Germany was telling them, okay, you can get out, and it wasn't valid to go anywhere. So they were stuck at sea for a really long time. And if you guys are ever interested, the St. Louis has a lot of books about it. And they were basically stranded there for 40 days, I think she said. Nobody would let the Jewish people in. It was like they were diseased, or they just weren't humans. So in my eyes, I feel as though even though she didn't go through what those that went to concentration camps went through, she was still labeled as somebody that was taboo. And she said, I'm Jewish, I'm still a human. It doesn't matter what color my skin is or what I believe in, I was still a human. And they weren't treated that way. And I asked her what she would want me to like share with everyone, and she has sons and a grandson, and I said what she would want them to remember, and she blatantly said everything. I don't want any part of my story to go untold. And I think that's really important, because everyone can take one piece of information and run with it and, you know, really put it into their everyday life, but she's the type of person that she wants everything to be told about her. And that's why I think she brought out these books, and she showed me all of these pictures, and she sat with me, and she was going through so much detail about her life so that I can find something and relate to it and spread her story and share her story. And unfortunately, my grandmother passed away in August, before, like a couple of weeks I think before this internship started. So as soon as I saw her, it was just like a connection with her, because I have my great-grandmother, but I don't have my grandmother, and she just looked like a combination of both of them. So it was kind of emotional for me, and she got really emotional when I brought that up, because although she wasn't in a concentration camp, she had to leave her grandmother back in Germany, and they put her in a home thinking they were doing the right thing, and later found out that Hitler took all of the elderly and put them in concentration camps, and she found out that her grandmother was, they said that she died from being old, but she knew that wasn't, she felt in her heart that wasn't why she had passed away. So she started crying when we were doing the interview, and she has a little bit of guilt because of that, because she feels like they should have taken her grandmother with them, but Hitler didn't allow elderly people to go. So I mean, I've learned a lot, and I would love to just come here on a Monday and meet with her again and just talk, because she's the type of person that she wants everybody to know her story, and she'll gladly show you all of the books, especially if you're interested. And she lives in Kew Gardens now. She volunteers here. She goes to some centers around her way as well. And that shows me that she's really active in the community, which is something that I would want to be, because I am studying to be a special education teacher. So I think educating others on whether you were in a concentration camp, any hardship that you go through, even though it might not be the exact same struggle, they still struggled. They were still feeling hatred. And I think everyone in this room can relate to that in some way, shape, or form, whether you're Spanish, whether you believe in something totally different or don't believe in anything at all. Everybody has an opinion, and it's up to you to either make it affect you and bring you down, or take their opinion, okay, I understand it, and just go about your day. So Jane really showed me that although she was not in a concentration camp, she was still affected, but she still goes about her days and lives life like nothing ever happened, even though she still wants everybody to know about her story. She made that really clear. But yeah, I think she's an amazing person. I just want to thank everyone for giving me the opportunity to interview her. So
Thank you.
If I could add just one thing, how important it is and how timely it is, the interviews you are doing. Yesterday at 10:30, Marissa and I were at the funeral of Jane's sister. Jane and her sister came over together, her younger sister, and her younger sister was quite sick, and she passed away Monday. We're at the funeral yesterday. So it's so important, the work that you're doing of meeting these people. So thank you. I thank you for that.